Okay, I think we're on. I see a little
Okay.
message that says start. Hello, Lawrence. How are you?
All right. Thank you for joining us, Peter. I'm going to just read a quick little, you know, just a quick bio. Um, as director of this film, it is our honor to have you as part of our discussion today. I think most people, if not everybody, thoroughly enjoyed it. So just as I said, just as a quick bit of housekeeping, Peter Weber, an award-winning documentary director, self-confessed cinephile. You have worked on a variety of projects, both in television and also feature film. And one of the most well-known, I think, associations you have is with the movie The Girl with the Pearl Earring. Now, I really want to start our Q&A with that. I'm aware that reggae music seriously impacted your adolescent years, but I really want to know how we got here, what was the journey from Girl with the Pearl Earring to Inna the Yard project?
Well, you see, the thing is, you start with Girl with a Pearl Earring, but what people don't know, except for some people in the UK, is all the work that I did beforehand. Because I was making films for 15 years beforehand, and there were a lot of music documentaries that I made during that period of time. So this is actually a continuum, if you like, and I've, as I've got older and I've become, a middle-aged filmmaker as opposed to a young filmmaker, I find that what I do is I go back and I connect with my passions and my enthusiasms, and a lot of those were born when I was a teenager, and that's when your cultural life really first starts, and so 15-year-old me fell passionately in love with reggae music, living in West London, hanging out when I was a teenager on Portobello Road, going to Notting Hill Carnival, going into corner shops that were full of Jamaicans or owned by Jamaicans, and there was obviously a very vibrant immigrant community in West London where I grew up. So I find that reconnecting with these kind of things, I still have the same passion and excitement for the things that I fell in love with when I was a teenager. So for me, it's not that it's a strange thing. Like I started off doing one thing and did another. There's been a continuum of always being in love with music and finally getting a chance to make a documentary about my favorite genre of music, which is reggae.
Okay. There's Because I've watched this movie more than once. I was lucky enough to see it at the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival before our screening. At the beginning of the film, the piano tuner Valdez, he establishes the gravity of the Inna the Yard project. That it involves performers like Ken Booth, Judy Mowatt, Cedric the Fisherman. Does the exposure, and this is one of my super reading moments now. Does the exposure of the inner workings of the piano act as a metaphor for the revelation of the stories of the participants in the Inna the Yard project?
That's a very, very smart reading, because it's only when you ask that question that I've realized, for me, quite often what I'm doing is I'm responding on an emotional level or a visual level. Sometimes it's intellectual, but film isn't just about intellect. It can be about a variety of things. And hearing that question makes me realize that, yeah, of course, it is metaphorical. You have this dusty old piano. It's been around for a long time. They dust it down, they get it ready for action in a way like these amazing men and women who've been around and performing for a very, very long time, getting themselves ready to make this album and make this film. And one of the things you have to do as a documentary director is to be watching all the time. And during the preparation for the film, obviously I spent time with the musicians, but I just remember this amazing guy, this piano tuner, turning up. And I was just fascinating. He came in, he was an important part of the process, but at the same time, he's a nobody, because he's not the performer. And those kind of people, they give you a way into the world, you know. And he had a wonderful quality about him, and he spoke so beautifully. And there was something quite poetic. So that's why I set up that opening with him. And we were very lucky because it was a super misty morning, and he comes like a ghost out of the mist, and it basically goes to work on the piano. And it was a nice, gentle way, and I think a very cinematic way of getting into the film and paying tribute, if you like, to these kind of people who are unsung heroes. If the piano's not in tune, there's no show.
Exactly. I mean, and the thing is, when you talk about how cinematic it was, I thought how perfect it was that he just emerged, as you said, out of the mist. And then he just he's like, he was the one who set the stage. I mean, set the stage literally and figuratively for the film. Yeah. So I found that like really just a beautiful way for it to begin. My next question now, slightly provocative. One of my fellow curators, Sebastian Carriol, when we were working on the Jamaica project, which is an exhibition featuring some of the aspects of the development of Jamaican music, not just reggae, he was acutely aware of the potential pitfalls of a non-Jamaican attempting to articulate Jamaican musical history. Was that one of your considerations making this film? And if so, how did you navigate those potential landmines?
Of course it was. Of course it was. It's very, very difficult. And it's important that you ask yourself, as a filmmaker, you ask yourself these questions. You know, was I the right person? Did I have the right to tell this story? So some of my first conversations with Kiddos, with Winston, you know, were about this very question. And you see, the thing is that there are certain, I don't know what you would say, tropes. There are certain, let's find a better word for it. There's certain approaches to making this film that are taken. If this was, let's say, a British documentary for TV, then what you would have is you would have an academic or a music writer. Quite often they would, you know, it would be a white academic or a white music writer who would then pronounce on the film, would give you kind of the lens through which to observe this. And I really, really wanted to avoid all of that. What I wanted to do was get myself out of the way. I wanted to make sure that there was no one telling the story apart from the participants, apart from Jamaicans. So there's only Jamaicans in this film telling their own story in their own words. This is why we went to, and I know, you know, we talked about Sammy before. This is why we went to Sammy the record collector, because I didn't want someone sitting there giving like this kind of cold academic or a journalistic overview. I wanted someone who lived on the island, who came from the island, who understood it from a different point of view. So for me, it was very much about listening to these people, listening to these amazing men and women and their stories, and obviously organizing the material and using my skills as a filmmaker to decide how to tell that story. But it's not my story, it's their story. And all I was doing, if you like, was giving them the megaphone. And that was super important. But the most important thing really was they empowered me to do that. And there was one thing in particular that I thought was interesting, which maybe is controversial to kind of throw back to you, which is something that Ken Booth said to me. He said, if it wasn't for Europe, he would have starved. You know, this is a great Jamaican music. I mean, it's a music that in the late 70s and the early 80s took over the world, yeah? But those times are long gone. And I wonder whether it will be true to say, and you tell me, that reggae is more loved in Europe than it is in Jamaica at the moment. Certainly, when just let me finish. I don't know if that's true. I'm being provocative deliberately. But when these guys, when Indiard played that concert in Paris, 3,000 Parisians came. They packed out that place, and they're in love with these. They're in love with this music. The energy and the vibrancy in that is amazing. So I think it's been a great Jamaican success story. And I guess all of these things made me feel that as long as I get myself out of the way and I give a voice to these people and give them a platform, then I have the right to tell their story. Apart from anything else, I love this music, you know, and I'm doing it's a real love letter. So there's no, you know, and we paid them all very well. We made sure they weren't exploited. We did everything we could possibly do. Yes, it's maybe a little bit controversial, but I hope in the end the results speak for themselves.
Well, no, it's an amazing film. To you know, this is my personal take on the question that you gave me.
Yeah, yeah,
It's hard to quantify and qualify love. I mean, it's our music, so I would like to think that we love our music the most. But I think
yeah,
the reality is that the differences between the economies of our country, our small country,
yeah,
and the various European countries that also love reggae music. I think it's really a matter of the realities of the differences between the economies and the ability to support these kinds of musicians and shows. Yes, of course, we support our musicians. We love our musicians here, but economically, there's just there's more opportunity and more money outside of Jamaica, and we're very lucky and very happy that they're able to benefit from that. But I think that's really my take on it. Is just really, I don't think it's a
yeah.
matter
No,
of
that makes
love. I think it's
that.
just a
Yeah,
matter of
that
the
makes a lot of
realities
sense.
of finance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a very good analysis. I think the thing is that the what happened certainly in from the mid '60s onwards, let's say, and certainly once you get into the '70s, once you get a superstar, the first real reggae superstar, obviously being Bob Marley, who is still an icon around the world. The thing that fascinates me is you have this relatively small little island in the middle of the Caribbean with a relatively small population that musically makes this enormous impact. And I think that says something, that there is something very special about the island, about the culture, about the people who inhabit the place. Talk about a nation punching above its weight. It's it's an incredible thing, and I think it should be celebrated.
Well, one of our favorite phrases here in Jamaica is "we're little but we're talawa." We're small but we're mighty. So
It's true.
and one of the key phrases from our, again, I have to go back to the exhibition that we're associated with.
Yeah.
It's that don't watch my size, I'm dangerous. So
Yeah.
We
Like a
we
stepping
do punch
razor.
well above our weight. It's interesting though, because I mean, when you speak about, or I mean, you mentioned our culture, and it kind of segues into what was my next question.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned Bob Marley, and of course, people think about Rastafari a lot when they think about Jamaica, and of course, it's part of our iconic images. But the film itself, I mean, when watching and rewatching it, it seems very centered on Rastafari music and culture. And there's one thing I wondered about, and it's it's really about Ken Booth. I mean, he's literally one of my favorite musicians ever, but his
Yeah.
story seemed a little bit tangential to what I was seeing with the Rastafari musicians. Is that a bit of a overinterpretation?
No. I think that's probably true for you because you are Jamaican. I'm much closer to the culture. I think for me, reggae has obviously, Rastafari is very important, and Rastafarianism is very important in terms of the music, in terms of the message. But there are different sides, There's, I mean, for example, there's Lovers Rock, and there's just been this amazing film on BBC that Steve McQueen has done, which pays tribute to that. There are different strands, there are different approaches, and I wanted to have a film that was more kaleidoscopic, that didn't just delve into Rastafarianism and the culture associated with that. And also the other thing I'd say is that when I saw Ken together with the other guys, it's like there was no difference. They're all musicians. They play slightly different flavors, maybe. And I know, Ken will probably not like me for saying this, but Ken takes the same refreshment that the other guys do. He just keeps it a little bit, he keeps it off camera, yeah? And he has the same spiritual kind of, I don't know, let's say spiritual identity, Now, he doesn't have the dreadlocks, obviously. You know, he has a different look, and because his style often is a bit different. He's kind of smoother. He's maybe takes some inspiration from soul as well. But I don't know that especially for a general audience, and this film is meant for, that there's the same enormous gulf. And I think it's important that people understand that there are different approaches. There are different kind of musicians. There's different approaches spiritually, musically, so on and so forth. So I was very happy that we could get him in the film, and also certainly for the UK, he's one of the better known musicians. And you know, you need a star in there.
No, I agree with you, because there is there is total interconnectivity. It isn't just like you have one branch over here and one branch over here, as you said, where they're just existing separate and not influencing, not interacting, not enjoying each other. So I agree. It's just one of those. It's just one of those questions when I thought to myself, you know, other musicians like Ken Booth, or you know, keeping it going with a particular set, because it's very easy to kind of have this kind of monolithic view of Jamaican music, of reggae music, and not realize that there are all connections. So I kind of, you know, that was another one of those poking questions that I wanted to just kind of put here. Now, to be very fair, you could have, and this is kind of continuing, you could have had a very rich documentary film focusing solely on, and I'm quoting Kidda's Eye on this, the roots of reggae music, you know, the Ken Booth, Judy Moore, their contemporaries. Why was it important to you for the branches like Janine and VAR to be integrated into this project?
It's, you know, the period of reggae music that I love and inspired me obviously goes back to the 70s and the 80s, and a lot of what I was looking at, like we went to Randy's Records, we went to Black Ark Studios, which, as you know now, was burnt down some years ago, so on and so forth, and it felt like it was kind of preserved, like it was almost like a museum. It really felt like it had come from the past, but the fact is that this is music that is still alive, and it's still alive with younger performers. And these older guys like Kiddas and like Winston, you know, they have reached out to these younger performers. They take them on tour, you know, they play with them. It's like they're passing on missions. And it felt to me like it was important not only to showcase some of these more older figures, but to shine a light on some of the younger ones, and to understand the way that culture is handed down from generation to generation, because that's part of what makes it a living culture. So it's not a dead art form, you know. It's not something that is preserved in aspect or belongs in a museum. It's something that's very, very living. And, you know, I think that the contributions of, let's say, VAR, who's just got a new single out, by the way, Revolution, which is a fantastic song. You know, you feel the youth and the energy there. And Darnine, to me, is one of the most important contributors in the film, not only musically, you know, because she's an amazing charismatic presence with a fantastic voice and a great musician, but intellectually as well. You know, she brings a kind of critical academic focus in there, but a very warm human one, and talks about issues in such an eloquent way that really it would have been, I would have done a grave disservice to the whole project not to have included her in it. So this is being handed down from generation to generation, like a relay race, like a baton. And you know, in some ways, there are some things where I approach it maybe in an intellectual way, but sometimes it's just from the heart as a fan, you know. And I met these younger musicians, and I love their passion and their energy and their talent. And I have an opportunity here with this film to kind of broadcast to the world, if you like, you know, to people who are interested in seeing this, to go into cinemas around the country, on TV channels around the country. And I thought you know, I wanted to give these guys the opportunity to let their voice be heard as well.
Okay, good answer. Now, the visuals of the film. I found the visuals of the film to be, I mean, as you know, like the images of Valdez, you know, Cedric on the boat and so on. I mean, they're absolutely exquisite. But there's one thing I wonder, the struggles, the realities that some of these musicians have had to face, dealing with harsh realities, corrupt music producers, which we heard about,
Yeah.
drug
Yeah.
addiction, and the other tragedies. Do you think that there's a danger that the beauty of the film could lead to a romanticization of the grittiness of these realities?
Well, clearly I don't, otherwise I wouldn't have shot it that way. I mean, what I tried to do was I tried to keep a balance in there. I mean, in that, yes, some of it is quite cinematic, but also a lot of it is very handheld. And it's a kind of very, we were there in the rooms, close with people. We were using wide-angle lenses. We were getting up very, very close. We sat back sometimes and were more observational. But the fact is that these men and women are very charismatic, and so their force, their musical spirit, and their force kind of enters the camera. The island that you live on is an amazingly beautiful place, and yes, there is hardship and there is poverty. And we hear about that in the film. And also we see some of the less, like, Port Jamaica, we see some of the poorer spots as well as the more beautiful spots. So it's not remotely, I think, like a tourist brochure or something. And I think there's an interesting dichotomy and a tension there that, you have a place which can look like paradise, but within that, you can still have death and financial problems and illness and career setbacks and all the rest of it. So I think for me, it meant that things balanced out. And I felt that we didn't just show, we also showed some of the grittiness of what island life was like as well, I think. And we didn't shy away from the real hardships in these, in these men and women's lives. And that was one of the things that I hope that the film has been successful in. Is, in a way, it's like a I don't know what you would say, a tribute to old age. Yeah, these these men and women are in their, the older ones are in their 70s now, and you can see that they've been through hard times and they've really survived. And there's so little in our culture, certainly in the West, in Western Europe, that is positive about what it is like to be, to be older and to be more experienced and have been through these ups and downs. And so I think that at the end of the day, it's part of the joyous nature of this film, because the film is a celebration, and that beauty is part of the celebration. I think there's some kind of a balance because, we talk about Ken Booth's drug addiction. We talk about, the death of Winston's son, for example. Those are very, very tough things. So I think there's sweet and sour, if you like, in there.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. This is kind of coming up to my last question now.
Okay, very good.
It was very interesting. And this is only because of time, because we could keep going with this conversation. But I found it really interesting that Judy Mowatt's and Janine's meditations or conversations on feminism in music and life preceded the final collaborative singing of mostly the males of By the Rivers of Babylon. Was this deliberate?
Well, listen, when you get into the cutting room and you start organizing all of this stuff, it all becomes deliberate. You start, when you're filming, sometimes things are from the guts, if you like. By the time you get into the edit room, you're responding in a different way. I think that's that the women bring something amazing to this film. You often find when you get to about an hour into a film that you need to put your foot on the gas, which is why I held the women's contribution back, in music, the musical contribution, because that was the moment where I really felt that I needed something else. And if you suddenly, I think that the depth of, that both those women are incredibly intelligent. They're very talented. They're very, very articulate. And the film moves off into a different and a slightly darker territory at that point. And we're trying to balance the darkness and the redemption that is in there. It's Jarline who kicks us off into this discussion of the Maroons and Nanny and so forth, and slavery and that kind of history in the island. And then that leads quite naturally, I think, into that redemptive final song, Rivers of Babylon, which is, you know, like a song of resistance and a song of survival. So yes, I think it's true.
Okay, because the thing is, I think women have played, I mean, in most societies, I think, kind of unsung role, the roles of unsung heroes. But I think women, especially in the development of reggae music, it's always seemed a very masculine space, a very male-centered space.
Yeah.
But it couldn't happen without women. And I think I found it a very important moment in the film, as actually almost like the penultimate moment of the film.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah. For me, it is. It's like the crux.
Yeah, it felt like it balanced everything off.
Yeah. And I don't know whether I'll get to do it, but really, what I would love to do is to come back to the island and make a film that is just about the female input, female musicians, you know, and to tell some of those untold stories in more detail. Sonia Pottinger, the famous producer, so on and so forth, and to really celebrate that. So we'll, you know, fingers crossed. Next time I come to Jamaica, I'll be researching that.
Definitely. Once we're past this moment in time, and you know, travel is again something that we can engage in actively. Yes, I hope that will become, you know, one of your next projects. I want to thank you, Peter, very much. I mean, for joining us, giving us your insights.
No, thank you for this opportunity. Really, I've always enjoyed this film. Is a real, you know, it was a real labor of love for me. Some films you do, it's like their work, but this one is just about my love for your island and for the music that comes from this island. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Okay, and I also have to thank Gael Nouvelle. I hope I'm not massacring her.
Gael Nouai. That's
the
producer.
All right.
Very French name.
And Gael, I want to thank the entire team at Charades Distribution.
Yeah, thank you guys for making this possible.
Exactly. I have to thank the Jamaica Film and Television Association, in particular their president, Annalisa Chapman, who went above and beyond the call of duty to make the screening a reality. I want to thank Sir Shen Morris at Set It for the secure streaming. And I want to thank, of course, our audience, without whom we would not be able to maintain our Last Sunday's community during these times. I want to just say to everybody, stay safe. And join us on December 27th for our annual Christmas Last Sunday special. Peter, thank you again. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Lawrence. It's been a great pleasure. I'll come and visit you, okay? I'll come and visit you when I come to Jamaica next. I look forward to meeting you in person, yeah? And thanks to everyone who's watching. Okay. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye.